Hi everyone, this is Craig from the University of Applied Research and Development, and this is part of our Veteran Stories, and I'm delighted to have Philip Hadlock with us. Welcome, Philip.
Good morning. Thank you, Craig.
Wonderful to have you with us. I'd love for you to just share what was your motivation for actually joining the military when you did?
That's that's a good one, Craig. Is Craig okay, or do you prefer Dr. Hanson?
Just Craig is good.
Craig, okay. So I joined the service in 1973. I graduated high school in 1971, and if you understand, the 1960s and the 70s here in America, we were going through this huge cultural swing, and I was a lost soul. I had a crummy kind of childhood and all of those stories and stuff, but I just realized after high school, and I went to junior college, but I was lost. I didn't have a goal, I didn't have a direction, and I really and truly just didn't know, in my core who I was. And so I decided that I needed some time to grow up. My father had been in the Army Air Force in World War II. He started off as a pilot, but he couldn't land the damn planes, those big bombers that they had, B-17s. He always landed too fast, so they made him a bombardier. He went out on a practice run here in the Midwest of our wonderful nation and bombed some farmer's chicken coop. So Dad was a patriot. He loved his country and he did his best. So those were my motivators, my father's experience, and just realizing that I needed some time to grow up. I loved my country. I am an American. I love freedom. I love democracy. All of those great things that I've been cultured into by having been born into this country. But I believe a lot of that. I really do, but not just for our country, but for everyone. So that was my motivation for joining.
That's wonderful. And so when you joined, tell us about the part of the service that you were in and some of your experiences.
Sure,
I
thank
know
you.
you've got some stories to tell.
I've got tons of stories. I'll just try to keep them short. So I did join in 1973. I was inducted early in 74. I did my basic training out of Fort Ord, California. It doesn't exist anymore. There's a monument there, but they closed that one. I went back to Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland, United States, for my what we call AIT. That's your Advanced Individual Training. Now, they put you through a series of tests. They ask you what you want to do, et cetera, et cetera. So I ended up, they thought that I would be a good typewriter repairman. Now, I don't know where that came from. Just I could use little tools, I guess. By the time I was 7 years old, Craig, I was taking TVs and radios apart and putting them back together. 7 years old, I was doing this stuff. So I understood mechanics, how things kind of fit together. When I get off track, just pull me back. So, yeah, so after basic training, AIT, they trained me in what's called my MOS, my military occupational specialty, was 45 Bravo 10. That is a small arms repairman. So you'll repair everything from the old 32 caliber officer's pistol that they used to carry on their hip, all the way up to the 106 millimeter recoilless Jeep mounted rifle. So I was doing, the M12, the M1, the M14s, the M16s, the 50 cal machine guns, the 60 cals. I was doing mini guns on the Cobra helicopters. But the neat thing about it is that it was mechanical. And if you remember, when I was 7, so I graduated first in my class. It was easy for me, Craig, and I set a new record at Aberdeen Proving Grounds for the highest score on a final test.
Wow.
So they sent me to a company that didn't have the mission, so I couldn't even work in the MOS that I was trained in. So they sent me over to Germany. My CO, my company commander, was Captain Stephen Grass. We had a lot of fun with his name, if you can
Can
recall,
imagine.
back in the early 70s. And he laughed and joked about it too. But what a great man. I admire. I wish I could find him again and just thank him for all the great advice and stuff that he gave me. So ended up over in Germany for a while. I became a clerk because I knew how to type. Got tired of that. went down to Augsburg, Germany for a special class in what they call POL. That's petroleum, oil, and lubricants. So I became a POL man. We got a new mission in our company for POL. And I became the only E4 section chief in Germany, because I had my own section. I was the chief. I was an E4. Usually you had to be at least an E5, but they made an exception for me. So I ran around Germany, Reforger 75. I got a commendation for the way I handled all of our fuels. Had fun out there in the woods, driving across, farmers' fields and all that happy stuff there in Germany. About 4 months before I was going to separate, so now it's 1976, we got reassigned. So we were no longer the 903rd Maintenance Company. We joined the 596th Maintenance, and we joined them as an evacuation company. We went from specialists to hard stripes, so now I became a corporal. And we were going over to Vietnam to retrieve all the equipment and find any missing people, all that happy stuff for the Green Beret. So we were allowed to wear that Special Forces pin. In fact, I have a Green Beret here that one of the soldiers gave me. So we went over, they started to clean up. They realized how much time I didn't have left on my enlistment, because I joined. So they just said, "Hadlock, what are you doing here?" They packed me up and sent me home. So that's my big story. But I really did accomplish what I was looking for, Craig. I grew up. I understood organization. I understood how people work as a unit to achieve a single goal out there, rather than, I'd always been an individual. I can do this myself, I can do that myself, but you can achieve so much more. And there's so much more adhesion when you have a group working towards a similar goal. And that's one of the various things I think that I learned in the service.
I asked you before we started the interview about your flag that you have behind you. Could you share with everyone about that?
I sure will. So this flag behind me, obviously an American flag, and you can see the gold fringe, which is a hanging fringe. Let me show you real quick. You can see that it just hangs on there. This is a war flag, and this flag flew in Vietnam. When I was still in Germany, a young man came back from Vietnam. His name was Monty Height. Monty and I shared a room in Nellingen, Germany, 2nd Support Command headquarters. And Monty actually, we became very close friends. We shared stories and goals and ambitions and all the things that men share together in their, friendships. And he gave me this flag. And so every one of these signatures that you see on the flag, let me try to do this. I'm going backwards. So every one of these signatures is one of my, what we call Ps. Anybody who's in the Army understands that means your people. These are your friends. So they give me their name, the date of their service, and the places that they come from. And I have guys from Texas and New Mexico and New York, and somebody's from Minnesota. Jake's from Minnesota. He's probably still driving a truck. He loved those big rigs. And just so it's just a reminder, of the men that I served with, and of the duties that we have, and of the obligations that we fulfilled. And second to none, Craig, is certainly that we were there standing for freedom and democracy. And I believe in freedom and democracy. Over dictatorship, absolutely. Good example going on right now in Ukraine, right?
Absolutely. And so when you said that you picked up this change of, or this development of this recognition of the value of teamwork and working together for a similar goal. And so when you transitioned back to civilian life, when you separated from the service, what was that like, moving back into civilian life for you?
Well, it's really interesting. The government, the Army, the services have done, psychological studies on how to transform a citizen into a soldier. So when you get into your basic training, my experience, even before I got off the bus at my first billets, building that you live in, they're calling me, they're telling me I'm whale shit, which lies on the deepest, darkest part of the ocean underneath all the other stuff, and that's who I am. And they have me doing push-ups, and they're calling me names, and they're telling me how worthless I am. So what they're doing is they're breaking down the individual, and then they break you. They take your clothes away. They take your name away. Suddenly you have no decisions. They tell you what, when, and how to do everything. And out of this comes a soldier, somebody who's part of a unit, somebody who follows directions, somebody who puts the unit and the mission above the individual. Now, when they release you, they give you your paperwork, your DD 214. They pat you on the back, say, hey, thanks. Now get out of here. There's no reconditioning back to society. And I think that this is a failure on the part of government. I think this is a failure on the part of our leaders having a little bit of foresight. There should be a program, a reintegration program. And I've been saying this for a number of years. I think it's one of the problems that we see. So I got out of the service. I got a job like anybody would. I wasn't real satisfied. So after a couple of years of that, I went back to school. Decided. So am I okay on this line of topic here?
Yeah, I'd love to hear what your experience was.
Okay. So I got out late in 1976, 77, 78. I'm working for a company called Regency Development Company. We're building commercial buildings in the San Francisco Bay Area and in Dallas, Texas, and in Houston. And we had a project in Santa Cruz, California. Beautiful place, Craig. You'd love it. I got to bring you here someday. So I worked for them for a couple of years and just, started off as a grunt, just cleaning up after the construction workers, the stuff they wouldn't clean up. And I worked my way up into management and then into finance and into leasing. And then we finished the California projects. They invited me to move down to Texas to continue my career with them. And I said, no, don't want to leave California. So I left them and did a couple of odd things for a couple of years and ended up going back to school. I decided that, I had my GI Bill benefits that I'd earned in the service. And doggone it, I think I had the opportunity. I realized that I had the opportunity to try to make something more of myself, where I could be more valuable in my community and to myself. So I went back to school, did a couple of years at American River College out of Sacramento, junior college, did fairly well there. Student body president, parliamentarian to the student council in my second year. Then I transferred to California State University up in Chico, where I continued to finish my undergraduate work. I majored in political science, international relations. I had a double minor in history and Asian studies, and I had a pre-law curriculum. So I was a busy boy at that time. And I did pretty well. I graduated with a 3.43. I think I had highest honors. So yeah, yay, all that neat, happy stuff. I thought I was going to be an attorney. So I took the LSAT, which is the law school entry exam, like the SATs. Partied like an animal the night before. I mean, how responsible is that, right? I mean, Craig, I'm up till 3 in the morning. Listen, but so I get up the next morning. It's 6:30 in the morning, and I'm clunking around. Took the LSAT and passed it in the top 15%. So and I got accepted to a Baylor School of Law down there in Waco, Texas, and started in my first semester and quit because I realized, and there are 4 attorneys in our family to begin with, so I've always been around the law, let's say. But I just realized how much I would have to compromise my ethics to be an attorney. And I wasn't ready to do that because I have a hard line of ethics, Craig, that I don't cross. I don't know if that's unusual. I haven't done the survey of other people, but that's just who I am. I have an ethic, and I don't lie. I don't cheat except for on my taxes, but don't tell the IRS.
I won't tell anybody.
No, I take whatever benefits I can. But anyway, so I'm off track. So I'm gonna come back to you.
So you didn't become a lawyer.
I'm sorry?
You didn't become a lawyer or an
No, I
attorney.
left law school and decided to get my MBA. So I took a correspondence course with LaSalle University Extension and got my MBA. I majored, my area of concentration was consumer product marketing and finance. So after that, I went and played for a year trying to decide what I was going to do with that. And then we went to Salt Lake City, Utah, actually to Provo, Utah, outside of Salt Lake. And I started running my dad's advertising agency, little company called Radion Broadcast Media. So I got in there, and in the first year, I increased our income by 78%, brought in a couple of new accounts, and learned about the advertising world, advertising, marketing, and media. And I liked it. You know, I'd kind of been around it. Dad had been involved in that sort of thing for most of his life. Dad was not in the family after I was 5 years old, so he was kind of out there somewhere. I know it's a story a lot of us have. But anyway, so I wasn't there on a day-to-day, and he wasn't there on a day-to-day basis. So, but I loved marketing. You know, I was helping people to begin with. I didn't conduct my business the same way that my father did because of my line of ethics. He took, let's say, liberties that I wouldn't take. So I was in advertising and marketing. That came to an end after about 3 years. Dad had had an illness and was left in a state where he couldn't work anymore. And I saw some things in the company I didn't like, so I just left. Went to Texas, Dallas, Texas, where I was publishing a magazine for the hotel and travel industry. Did that for a couple of years, left that with my partners, went back to California, and you're gonna chuckle about this, Craig, but went back to California and started teaching martial arts.
How different is that?
I know, right? So I've been in martial arts since 1970. So that's 52 years, yeah. Loved it. I studied Kenpo, American Kenpo, that was introduced to this country by Master Ed Parker, who was a Hawaiian fella. There's a big story there, but we're not going to go that direction today. So I started teaching martial arts and continued doing some consulting on the side. Loved the marketing aspect, so I did some consulting and have done for over 40 years. So I've kind of had a dual role of marketing and martial arts. Let's see, married my wife. So we're going to backtrack a little bit. So I'm back at Chico State University in my undergraduate work. And actually, let's take a step back from that. I'm in junior college. And since I'm a veteran, I'm working in the office as the veterans rep. In walks this girl. Now, usually Betsy would go up and handle, everybody at the counter. But this was a cute girl, Craig. And, I was attracted. So I got up out of my desk and I went up and I said, "Oh, can I help you?" And she looks at me and she's chewing gum. I said, "Oh, do you have a piece of gum for me?" She goes like this, Craig, takes the gum out of her mouth and sticks it in my face. I'm saying to myself, I like this girl. 42 years we've been married. 42
Wow.
years, 2 kids, 5 grandchildren. And it's been, the marriage has been as much of a challenge as anything that I've done in my life. For her too. It's tough to stay together, but we had a commitment to each other and we have an ethical basis. And, it's just based on the fact that we told each other we would love each other till the day we died. And we're going to work through it all until that happens.
Beautiful.
So God bless her.
I hope you bought shares in that gum company.
I'm sorry, say again?
I hope you bought shares in the gum company.
Yeah, that would have been a natural. No, Don's in the floral industry, floral arranger, and just a wonderful artist too. I'll share some of her work with you later.
Somehow between then and now, you've developed a passion and an interest for veterans and veterans who are homeless and the needs around that. So I'd love for you to share about that because I think that's really important.
Yes, thank you, Craig. So I've had a passion for, let's just say, underprivileged since I was little. And it's probably because of some of the experiences I had. I didn't want others to have to go through those kinds of things, you know. So it's a motivator, it's a foundation. I developed my first nonprofit, my first 501c3 nonprofit organization back, I think, when I was 20 years old. I'd read an article in the Los Angeles Times newspaper about child prostitution in Hollywood, and it just disturbed me to my core. I mean, I'll start crying in a minute if I keep talking about it, but I just decided something had to be done. So I started a little company I called UP Child Development. UP is Uncle Phil. I already had some nieces and nephews, they're calling it. So it was Uncle Phil Child Development. And we just tried to develop programs and, you know, to help kids get out. It didn't really go anywhere. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no money, but I knew I was heartfelt. And so from that, having been a veteran now and seeing the homeless crisis that we have in this country in particular, I've just been drawn to it. So I have friends in politics. I'm in Sacramento, California, which is the capital of our state. And I have friends in politics and political consultants. And so about 2.5 years ago, we have this governor, Gavin Newsom. And when Newsom became governor, he came on TV and he said, hey, California has no plan for ending homelessness. So I'm going to develop a plan. So he developed a plan. 6 months later, his Office of Legislative Analysis came out and said, Governor Newsom, your approach to homelessness and your $12 billion budget is not going to have any meaningful effect on the nation's largest homeless population. So, you know, go back to the drawing board, more or less. So, you know, in typical political fashion, he created a council to handle it for him. And everybody just does the same thing over and over, the same thing over and over and over, and it goes nowhere because, you know, in this country, we spend tens of billions of dollars on homelessness every year, Craig, every year, tens of billions. And in fact, it's estimated that in this year, 2022, the 10 billion from the federal government, and then added to what the states, the counties, and the cities are doing, it's a $50 billion gift, right? But I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen. The same thing that happened last year and the year before that, and every year since we've really been keeping track, and that is the number of homeless is going to go up. It happens every year. In 2013, our president, Barack Obama, set a national goal, high-profile national goal. We're going to end homelessness for veterans. We're going to end veterans' homelessness by 2015. So he gave himself 2 years, right? So the official count by our governmental agency, HUD, which is Housing and Urban Development, they keep track of all the homelessness numbers. So in 2013, their number of homeless veterans was 58,000. By the time 2015 rolled around, you know, his target date, the number had come down to about 44,000, right? So it looked like, okay, well, we've eliminated, 12, 13,000 veterans. But all they really did is, again, typical politicians, they looked at the problem and they created categories of homelessness. And they took people out of this category and they started to spread the numbers around. So the number of homeless went down.
Right.
So this is unsheltered homelessness. They don't look at the guys, who have no home and no job, that are living on their sister's sofa, or their high school best friends, he's got a tent in the backyard. There's another 100,000.
Right.
So every year we spend tens of billions, and every year the numbers keep going up. Now, veterans, as you and I had discussed, previously to this interview, in this country, we owe everything to veterans. How's our time?
Good.
Okay, we're a country born of war. Everything that we have, all the freedoms, all the liberties that we have, are because of veterans. And yet we have 42,000 unsheltered homeless veterans in this country who are going to be living, behind the store, under the freeway overpass in the box, the big boxes in the tents and some other kind of makeshift shelter. And there's just no reason for it. Okay, so I'm going to get to the heart of what we're doing now. We've created an organization that's called the Veterans Joint Task Force on Homelessness. Now, we have joined with another group that is called America's Homeless Vets. With America's Homeless Vets, we own homes and we put homeless veterans into them. I'm also sitting on the board of Sacramento Recovery. It's a drug and alcohol and mental health recovery program where we do both residential and what we call outpatient drug and alcohol rehabilitation. We have doctors, we have medical professionals, we're doing all the stuff that everybody else does, right? But it's a never-ending process. I mean, just putting somebody. So the government's big program now is this program called Housing First. I don't know if you've heard of it, but what it means is that they're going to take a homeless person and stick him into an apartment without any preconditions. Housing first. Then we'll find out, is he strung out on alcohol? Is he shooting heroin? Is he, a murderer in disguise? Is he mentally, out there somewhere? But they put him in the house first. So a couple of years ago, I was talking to a young man over at what we call CalVet. Now that's the California Veterans division of our big Veterans Administration, our national federal agency. So I'm talking to this young man. I'm not going to name him. He'll stay anonymous, but his position was that he was the Veterans Housing and Homelessness Prevention Officer. Okay, so he's the man in California where it comes down to veterans homelessness. So I'm talking to Sean. Oh, I'm not going to say his name, right? So I'm over there talking to this guy. I did that on purpose. So I'm over there talking to Sean. He's not going to care. And he says, let me tell you a story about Housing First. So they have a Housing First project here in Sacramento. We took a homeless veteran and we stuck him into Housing First, put him into that apartment, right? Somebody's coming by and taking him if he needs a doctor's appointment. Somebody's bringing him food. Somebody's bringing him a jacket when it gets cold. You know how it goes. So 90 days, there's a check on the guy. So this officer, this young man who I've named, who's the Veterans Housing and Homelessness Prevention manager at CalVet, he went himself to check on this vet. He was invested in the veterans, benefit. Okay. Knocks on the door. The veteran opens the door. He steps in. He looks down by the door, Craig, and here's a backpack and a box with all of this guy's possessions in it. I mean, he's in a furnished apartment. There's dressers, closet, bed, kitchen with all the dishes and food in the cat. Everything's there, right? He looks over at the bed. There's a sleeping bag on the floor by the bed. The guy's been sleeping on the floor with all of his stuff by the door for 3 months. So when Sean asked this guy, well, why? He said, well, because I'm sure I'm going to get kicked out of here at any moment. I've got to be ready to go. It's his experience. But even after 3 months, where is this guy mentally? Still on the streets. He's still home. He sees no future, no confidence. He has no friends. He's just stuck in a box somewhere. And they call that housing. This guy is now sheltered. So he's taken off of the rolls of the unsheltered homeless, the 42,000 veterans that we have out there. So in his own way, Sean was trying to tell me how they see this program working. And so I'm going to interpret for him the thing doesn't work, right? So we spend billions on building these inexpensive apartments, whether it's Housing First or the big projects they have going on in LA or the stuff they're doing even right here in Sacramento. There's no solutions out there. All they're creating is low-cost housing. But if you can't afford the rent, and it might only be $600 a month, where $2,200 is the standard these days in this part of California. It might only be $600, but if you don't have that, what happens to you? You're right back on the street again. So it's not a solution to homelessness. It's a solution, perhaps in part, to low-cost housing, but it's
Mm.
not a solution to homelessness. So we've created a new program, and I'd like to take 5 minutes to show that to you, Craig. May I?
Sure.
Okay.
Please do.
I'm going to make a little adjustment here and bring in a graphic that is so simple to see and understand. Let me adjust my camera. Okay, so I'm going to go right there. Okay, so I'm going to start over here on this side. This, if we can get that into the screen there we go. This is good enough. So this is what I call the social services model. This is the model that government created, and all the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations, all of the nonprofits, everybody that's trying to mitigate homelessness follows this model. And this is a simple explanation. Please understand that. It doesn't matter how you dress it up. It doesn't matter what name you give it. It's all the same stuff in the final analysis. So here you see our homeless guys, right? And they're pushing their carts around. They've got their bottles and their possessions and all that stuff. So when it gets cold, Craig, someone's going to find a coat and throw a coat at these guys, right? You've seen it happen. You know, if they're walking around, somebody's going to throw a pair of shoes at them.
Mm.
If they fall down and have convulsions on the ground, somebody's going to pick them up and take them to the hospital and get some medical for them, right? And of course, you know, you've done it 100 times. I do it every day. I give somebody $5 or a McDonald's hamburger, so they're going to get fed. But if you look at this model, and it doesn't matter how fancy it is or how many administrators there are or how many millions of dollars you're spending, all of these things do nothing to lift him out of homelessness and change the mindset of homelessness. In fact, all of these things, Craig, do just the opposite. They keep him homeless. There's nothing raising this guy out of homelessness in this model. So we've created a new model. Instead of based on social services, I don't know if we can get this whole thing in here. Let me go back a little bit. Okay. So what we have here is we call this our integrated business model. Okay. Don't be confused. We're still working on homelessness. So what we're going to do is we're going to start here with the homeless guy. And the first thing we're going to do is take him out of the urban environment, that homeless environment. Yes, there's homelessness in rural areas, but 95% of it's in the urban center. So we're going to take him out of the urban center. We're going to put him in what we call our forested homestead facility. So we're going up in the hills, up into the tall trees. And we're putting him in this facility. Now, this is going to remind, we're talking about veterans right now, even though this is applicable to any segment of the homeless population. Okay. You can see my finger, but you can't see me. That's cool. Okay. So we take him out of the urban center and we put him up here. He's up here for almost a year. He has responsibilities, he has obligations, and he has vocational training. He can choose one of 3 different vocational programs, and they are culinary, auto mechanics and sales, and greenhouse, landscape, and nursery operations. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so he's up here for a year. He's going through a reorientation and a reintegration program. We talked about that earlier when we were talking about separating from the service, right? So it's the same kind of process. We allow this guy to realize himself again. From there, he goes to an in-town apartment, and from there, he'll go to a job in one of the 3 vocations, whichever one he learned, right? Now, here's the trick to this, Craig, and here's what makes this possible. We own all this. We own every aspect of this process. So we can guarantee home, we can guarantee job. By owning all this, it creates this line. And this is what we call the Veterans Task Force Continuum. And here's the blessing of that, Craig. This homeless guy stays in a room with another individual at this facility, but there's 50 other guys up there. He creates friendships, right? It's natural. You're up there for a year. You're going to get to know some people. You're going to create a friendship. Okay. The same people that you become friends with here are the same guys you live with here in the apartments. So those friendships can continue. It's the same guys you work with here at your jobs. Same guys. Still the same guys. Friendships. And what this task force continuum creates is community. Now, you talk to anybody who has a master's degree in social work, and they'll tell you that the number one thing that's missing in all these government programs is community. There's no continuity to the programs, and there's no continuum. Every one of these services, and whether the guy's on the street or he's in a housing facility, and people are still throwing stuff at him, it doesn't matter how you dress it or what you call it. It's still the same, and it doesn't lift them up. But I'll tell you, there are developers out there making billions of dollars building these little apartment complexes and renovating these old hotels and all of that stuff, which leads to other problems, of course, which I have examples for if we have time. But I want to get back to this integrated business model. If you really think this through, if you have a business mind and you understand that we own all this, and that we're taking these homeless veterans and we're training them and putting them into these jobs, if we do this year after year after year and get more and more facilities, and we start, let's say, graduating hundreds of these guys every year, thousands, then what does this become? These become national brands. So you'd be driving down the street in California and it's 11:45, you want some lunch and you see a veterans restaurant. Well, of course you're going to stop there. It's veterans, right? And so we create these brands. These are all nonprofit 501c3s. So all the money that's made here comes all the way back to feed the entire program. Now, that's how it pays for itself. We don't need ongoing tax obligations out of our citizens. We need seed money to build this and to buy this and to make this happen. So what we did is we took our process and we put it into a 2-year, what we call in government generally is a demonstration project. You have a new premise, a new thesis, let's say, and you put it into a demonstration project and you demonstrate its viability, and then that gives you data on which, and they like their programs based on data. So this is how government does it. But this program will stay in the private sector. We're not going to give this to government because they'll just screw it up. I could use the F word there, but I'm not going to, right? Because that's what happens.
Yeah.
We had a governor here in California named Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator. You know the guy, right? Well, he now has an institute down in Los Angeles where he puts together political processes, and tries to advise government and do all of this sort of thing and all of that sort of thing. One of the things, if you open up his website, and it's in conjunction, I think, with the University of Southern California, USC, he says, hey, I'm paraphrasing. He says, hey, we understand that the brightest minds aren't in government and that most of the great solutions aren't in government. They're from the people who have their leather on the street. They're the small guy who's involved in his heart and in his mind, to find solutions. So we're trying to find those guys, right? Now, this is typical of all the foundations, all of the governmental organizations, and all of the individuals I've talked to over the last 2.5 years to try to get this thing funded. And that is that we don't fit in the box. Well, what is innovation? What is creativity? It's stuff that's outside of the box. So we've been having a terrible time finding our funding for this. Now, this 2-year demonstration project is a $20 million price tag. But all I need is $2 million, Craig. Can you write me a check today? No?
Let me just grab my check.
Yeah, I know. Mine too. Check's in the mail. So with this, I've pulled some other strings, and we are creating a 5-hour music media event that'll be broadcast on television and on the internet. We're going to have 20 musical acts, and we'll have 20 cameos, little 2-minute things where Arnold Schwarzenegger will come out and say, I'm a veteran and I owe everything to these guys, And so what we're going to do through that is number one, we're going to tell everybody we have this demonstration project and to watch us. And we'll do videos every week. We'll show the development. We'll talk to veterans. We'll talk to people that are working out there. It'll be in your face, right? The whole time. And so to fund this, we have that, as I said, that 5-hour media event. And we're going to create what we call a network of supporters. You know, these are the guys that are going to give you $5 a month. So in the United States, we have almost 22 million veterans. If I can get 200,000 of those guys to give me $5 a month, or citizens, I'll take citizens, right? You can do the math. You know, that's plenty of money to get through this program. And when I ask people, when I say, hey, you know, I need $5 a month out of you, it's only for 2 years. It's only a $120 obligation. That's nothing. You know, that's lunch in Los Angeles. Anyway, so this is what we're doing. We've shown this already to several different of our state legislators. I've shown this to a few political consultants. I've shown this to several business executives, and they're all just chomping at the bit. They say, this will work. This will work. But nobody's willing to go further with me, and I don't understand. So new solutions are always difficult when you have to break down the old barriers. But I'm here until that happens.
Phillip, what's the best way for people to connect with you if they either have resources that they can put into this, or they know people that they can connect you to who can help this become a reality? What's the best way to get hold of you?
Well, we do have a website, of course, and the address of that website is Vets Task Force, all one word, VETSTASKFORCE.org. And there's, of course, a communication link there. Or they can, I'll even give you my personal email. It's my name, Phillip, PHILLIP HADLOCK, HADLOCK, @gmail.com. I'm willing to go anywhere in the world for a 20-minute meeting to explain how this new model works, who we have supporting us, and how we're going to, this is a solution. But we're only going to prove the point until we go to our phase 2, which I'm not going to discuss today. It's much, much larger, but it's based on the same premise. We don't see homeless people as victims, Craig. We see them as undeveloped resources.
So, Phillip, what I've done is I've just put the website link into the chat, which means it's appeared on Facebook and on YouTube, and obviously on the show notes for this, people can see there's the link to your LinkedIn profile, so people can get hold of you via LinkedIn as well. Yes. So that information's there. So the website's there, the link to your LinkedIn profile. And I really want to express my admiration for you. Thank you for your service, firstly, serving to protect freedom, and the sacrifice that you made to do that and investing your time into that. And thank you for what you're doing to provide and develop this opportunity to not just give housing, but give an opportunity for community and learning some skills and becoming autonomous as a human being, rather than being dependent on other people and staying in their position, but giving them an opportunity to pursue a meaningful contribution to community. So it's really wonderful what you're doing. So thank you for that. Is there any last word or encouragement or prompt that you'd like to give people who might see this video?
I would just say, give today, whether it's to veterans or to the hungry or to the uneducated or to those who are experiencing violence, abuse, for those that don't have opportunities. And for this guy right here, this Dr. Hansen and his university, he is doing things, folks, that you need to know about and you need to be involved in. So, Craig, really, I appreciate your thanking me, but the thanks really goes to you today. So thank you very much, Craig, and may all the blessings and the accolades that the world has to offer fall upon your shoulders.
And you too. Thank you very much. And for those of you watching the recording, do remember that with the comments, wherever this is found, there is Phillip, our Army veteran. There is the link to his website and also the connection to his LinkedIn profile. We look forward to seeing you again on another Veteran Stories. Phillip, please don't go anywhere just as I wrap up the show. And for those of you that are interested in pursuing a higher degree, whether that's a bachelor or a master's degree, we are VA funded. So if you're a veteran, we'd love to help you achieve your goals as well. We look forward to seeing you again on another Veteran Stories.
Thank you so much.